Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today on the channel we're going to be talking about the 1996 neo-noir mystery film Lone Star and its brand new Criterion Collection 4K Blu-ray that just came out. So Lone Star is written, directed, and edited by John Sayles, one of the greatest independent directors of all time. He's actually really never had that big mainstream Hollywood film, but everyone knows that John Sayles is a fantastic writer-director. In the 1990s, we had great independent films come out, mainly from directors like Steven Soderbergh and Quentin Tarantino, but John Sayles was right there, and Lone Star might very well be his best film. And this was the first time I ever saw this movie, actually. It always slipped by me, and then the artwork for the Criterion Collection caught my eye, and I was like, this seems like the kind of movie I would absolutely love. And sure enough, it is a movie I absolutely love. As a big Western fan, and a big fan of like these modern Western films like Hell or High Water and No Country for Old Men, we don't really get too many of these, and man, we got a great one in 1996. And the plot of this movie is pretty simple. You kind of feel like you know what it's building up to, even though it is a noir film. And noir films start in one place. We think we're telling a very simple story, and it ends up ballooning into this big, overwhelming story that has a lot of twists and turns in there.
A lot of twists. A lot of twists in this thing.
The movie starts off with these two guys. They're looking for old bullets. They got the metal detectors out, and what do you know? They discover a skeleton, a dead body. So they call up the local sheriff, Sam Deeds, played by the great Chris Cooper, who is always an underrated actor. He's never bad. If you ever see movies like American Beauty, Adaptation, and then even pretty recently, he was great in the remake of Little Women that was directed by Greta Gerwig. So Chris Cooper, fantastic actor, and he's fantastic in this movie. And Sam Deeds, he's the sheriff of this town. You know, everybody respects him, mainly because his father was Buddy Deeds, a local legend, considered one of the greatest sheriffs, mainly because his predecessor, this guy, Charlie Wade, a real piece of shit that he was, played by the great Chris Christopherson in this movie. And actually, Buddy Deeds, the younger Buddy Deeds, is played by Matthew McConaughey, because this movie is actually taking place during two different timelines. Turns out that this body, and it seems pretty obvious from the very beginning, so this isn't a spoiler because I don't want to spoil this movie, this body is Charlie Wade, because there was an incident back in the 1950s where Buddy Deeds finally stood up to Chris Christopherson's Charlie Wade, called him out for all of his bullshit and how he's been treating everybody in town, and everybody saw this argument happen, so it becomes a legend. And what do you know? After that argument, that was pretty much the last time anyone ever saw Charlie Wade, so there was always these suspicions that something must have happened to him, and so a lot of people did believe that Buddy Deeds did have involvement in that. But because Chris Christopherson, as we see throughout this movie, is just such a terrible person, because this movie's also dealing with a lot of racial issues in this border town. Most of this town is of Mexican descent. There is also black people in this town. They are the real minority in this town. And then the white people, they aren't the majority. The Mexican community is the majority, but the white people are still in charge of this town. So that creates a lot of racial tension in it. And they're really exploring that. They're exploring the racial issues that took place 40 years ago and that are still taking place now. And that really is the best part of this movie, is the story of this movie, because we're introduced to plenty of different characters as this film is going on, and we learn all about their family history, their history, what led them to here. We get a great arc with this character Otis Payne and his son, and then his son's son. His son's actually played by Joe Morton, who I'll always think of Miles Dyson from Terminator 2.
I don't know how much longer I can hold this.
And he looks exactly the same, and that voice is always so recognizable and iconic to me. And you learn about their family history and how Otis has a bad relationship with his son, and then how that relationship has affected him, and now how he's having a negative relationship with his own son. And all these stories are kind of intertwining, but it's really these characters and how they're played. They're really telling human stories, and human emotions are coming out, while also being wrapped up in this plot about murder, and how this town is burying its history, and what this town is actually built on, and how Sam didn't have this great relationship with his father, Buddy. Everybody loves Buddy. They tell you how good of a guy Buddy is. He was the best sheriff this town has ever had. Now, Sam got voted into being sheriff, but he really wasn't into it.
You don't want to be sheriff.
I gotta admit, it's not what I thought it'd be.
That really wasn't his thing. They just kind of approached him as, you know what, the Deeds name carries a lot of value around here, so why don't you come in, be the sheriff, lead this town. We need that. Shows how politics work, how politics still work. You know, it's kind of not done in those rooms that you really think it is. It's really done when they're just walking around talking about everything. And we also start to uncover some other characters' history. One of them is Elizabeth Peña and her character's history, her relationship with her mother. We also see that she had a relationship with Chris Cooper's Sam as well. We don't really know what exactly happened, but there seems to be some tension there, and we get to uncover that as the film goes on. And as the film builds up, we build up to a great conclusion. But again, as good good as the plot of this movie is, the story of all of these characters, their past and their present, is all so interesting that you just get wrapped up in it, and you just enjoy all these walking and talking moments, all these scenes of just people basically pouring their heart out to each other, but it never feels schmaltzy or over the top. It's really done in such a human way that this movie is just fantastic. It's one of the best written movies that I've ever seen. I can't believe this movie slipped by me. I'm an idiot for that one. It's shot beautifully. It's paced fantastically. It's edited so well, which is always so funny because John Sayles did the editing for this movie as well. And there were some great things that he did in this movie with the editing, where we would be in present day, we'd be in the same scene, and he would just kind of move the camera like either to the left or right, and then we're back in the 1950s. Then he spins that camera back around, and we're back in present day. So we get to see the same place in the previous era, and then how it's evolved into the present day. Sometimes it's gotten better, but for the most part, it's gotten worse. And I just love how they're exploring that throughout this entire film. I love this movie. I can't believe it took me this long to see it. I'm an idiot. This is definitely going into the permanent rotation for me. Even if you can't check it out on this Criterion 4K Blu-ray that we're going to talk about right now, this is a fantastic film that I can absolutely recommend. I think it's on Prime Video as we speak, so definitely give this one a watch. I promise you, you will not regret it.
All that to pick a football player for your squad. Compared to that, what you know about a person when you get married to them doesn't amount to diddly, does it?
And here it is, Lone Star on 4K Blu-ray, courtesy of the Criterion Collection. And like I said, what really stuck out to me and made me actually want to check this movie out and grab this film was this box art. I love the box art that they did for this. Really stood out to me. Just kind of like stands out in the crowd. I really love what they did. Beautiful looking artwork here. And when you come inside, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but the two discs, you get a 4K disc and a Blu-ray disc. It looks like there's dirt over that light blue in here, which I thought is just awesome. Really attention to detail. You get some reading material right here. Kind of folds out into like a little pamphlet. It's not too much reading material. It's very thin, but good paper stock as well. And you get an essay on there. And you also will find out exactly how this transfer was done. It comes from the original camera negative, the 35mm camera negative. It was overseen by the director and the director of cinematography. Both of them actually did interviews on here, and those are the only two extras are from the two of them, but they did oversee the transfer, which is really appreciated because that always means that the film actually came out looking how they wanted it to originally look. And my God, it does look absolutely stunning. The visuals were fantastic on this. Even for the Blu-ray, the pack-in Blu-ray is just a downscaled version of this new 4K transfer, so you just won't have HDR10 or Dolby Vision over it, and obviously you're going to get a decrease in resolution, but it's still a great Blu-ray. So if you don't have the funds for the 4K Blu-ray, but you want to get that beautiful transfer anyway, I can definitely say, hey, the visuals on that Blu-ray are just awesome. And on the 4K Blu-ray, when you get that big jump to HDR10 and Dolby Vision, it might not be as noticeable as you think, but it is pretty damn noticeable. Really, in the opening scene when we're out in that Texas desert and they're just walking around and you're looking at the sand and the blue sky, on the Blu-ray, it's a little bit dim. Not too dim, though. I don't want to sell that too short, but now we're brightening it up and it just looks stunning. The skin looks natural. The way the sun's reflecting off their skin, it doesn't look fake or artificial like it's been wiped clean. It doesn't look like it's handling the colors poorly. No, it all looks great. There's a scene later in the movie, and I didn't bring this up in my film review because Frances McDermott does pop up in this movie, which is really funny because this came out the same year as Fargo, her Academy-winning performance in Fargo, and she plays just a over-the-top, kind of very tightly wound, and she brings this up type of person. She's clearly a huge Texas football fan because she's wearing a Cowboys jersey while also wearing a Houston Oilers hat, which makes no sense for any football fan. You don't root for both teams. That's like me being a Jets and Giants fan. Just not gonna happen. But she's just so tightly wound and she's so funny in this movie. Really love her performance. She came in for one scene and just kind of stole that one scene. It was great. But she's wearing a blue Dallas Cowboys jersey and she's wearing a light blue and red Oilers hat. And when you watch it on the Blu-ray, that might not stand out, but when you watch it on the 4K Blu-ray, just because of that HDR10 and that Dolby Vision, you're seeing that contrast in the colors. It just looks stunning. Even Elizabeth Peña in one part in the movie, she's got this, like, I don't know what they call those, like those hair scrunchies in, but it's a really big one and it's in a bunch of different colors. Those colors just kind of pop out at you now. You know, there's a limited amount of film grain throughout this film. Honestly, it's the perfect amount. Everything with the visuals are perfect. They really didn't hold anything back. It kind of reminded me of last year's Thelma and Louise as far as the transfer goes. It looks very similar to that. It's not the warmest looking film. Even though it takes place in Texas, you would think it would be very warm looking. No, it's much more cooler looking. The color temperature of this movie is definitely more cool. So, you know, like the light blues, it's very lightly lit, which is really good as well. Even though the scenes that take place in the dark, which there aren't really too many of them, really leaning into the sun aspect of this movie. But when they are dark scenes, they do handle the deep blacks very, very well as well. You know, it doesn't become overly grainy. So overall, as far as the visuals go, absolutely stunning. giving those a 10 out of 10 for sure. But just remember, this movie does take place in Texas, so it's not like one of those movies where all the colors are going to pop out at you and be really dynamic and really stand out. You know, there's a lot of beiges, tans, light blues, grays, dark greens throughout this film. But whenever you get something really colorful, like I was saying with Frances McDermott or Elizabeth Peña scrunchie, that stuff does stand out. Just shows you that they really did a fantastic job on this transfer visually. Now, the audio, you only have one option. You can't even pick anything else. You can change the subtitles, but as far as audio goes, that's it. You're getting an English DTS HD 2.0 on here. That's all right. Honestly, I really have no issue with that. It's uncompressed. It sounds great. You know, maybe more people would want a lot more use of the other channels. There are some background effects that would have been great use in other channels instead of it just being this one mono track, but I really had no issue with it. This movie is very, very, very dialogue heavy. That is the most important aspect of this film. There really isn't too much action in it. There really isn't too much score playing in the background where we have to make great use of all the channels. No, the only thing that's really going on in the background is like early in the movie, if they're in a kitchen, you might hear people running water, people walking around, plates moving around, really just background noise just to create the atmosphere. That's really all that's going on in the background. Otherwise, it's very, very dialogue heavy. So you just want to make sure that stuff comes in crisp and clear, and it really does. Great audio track. There's really no flair to it. It's nothing that you would really like, hey, this stands out in the crowd. No, it's just really good for what this type of movie is. So I have no complaints other than, you know what? It'd be cool to get a DTS HD 5.1. I would like to see stuff spread around a little bit more just to see how it would be. But it's really not worth complaining about because it is a solid audio track. And like I was saying about the extras, the only extras on here are the two new interviews with the director of cinematography and the director, John Sayles. Both of them are great interviews. The interview with John Sayles is 38 minutes long. It was fantastic. It had me captivated. Really enjoyed that. Really diving into his philosophy on life. Because of this movie, you know, we're really talking a lot about people's views, whether it be in politics or just their view on life in general. So you kind of dive into John Sayles and what he likes about life and what his thoughts are on life and how he kind of incorporated that into this film, Lone Star. And I really did appreciate that. Thought it was fantastic. Because one thing I didn't bring up is, as far as the script is, there's not much humor in it, but when there are some jokes, they are pretty damn funny. There's a couple of them. They're very similarly structured jokes, but I thought they were both really funny. There's one where the three army guys are running, and I'm just going to call him Miles Dyson. Miles Dyson says to the one guy, any substance abuse? And he's like, well, yeah, but, you know, I went through the program. He's like, no, on the base. Like, that's a really funny joke that kind of pops up very similar later in the movie. Chris Cooper says to his deputy, he's like, you know, I'm thinking about switching sides. And he's like, Republicans? And he's like, no, going to Mexico. Like, you know, those little jokes like that, really funny, and it got a big laugh out of me both times. But, you know, it's kind of ties into how John Sayles is as a writer. Like I said, this really is his baby. He's directed it, he wrote it, he edited, he had complete control, and that's really why he doesn't like to work in the studio system, because you lose that creative control, and he just wants to tell compelling stories, and he really did with this 4K Blu-ray. I have almost no complaints about it, other than I would have really liked more extras. I kind of feel like this is the kind of movie that not many people know about. I mean, I was one of those people. I didn't know how good this movie was. You know, you need somebody to tell you that, hey, this is a fantastic film that you should check out. And then that's the kind of way we get more extras out there, more making of documentaries. But for what we get on here, it really is impressive. I really think the visuals are the standouts in this entire package, but the audio is good, the packaging is good. Obviously, it's nothing special. It's standard Criterion. We didn't get the digipack here, but what we did get is fantastic, and I love the artwork on it, love the attention to detail on the discs. The extras, I would have liked more. That's probably my biggest disappointment, but the limited amount of extras that are on here are really good. So how would I rate this 4K Blu-ray on a score of 1 to 10? I would give this 4K Blu-ray a pretty damn solid 8.5 out of 10. I could definitely recommend it at full price, but if you've never seen this movie before and you're like, hey, I could wait a little while, wait for the Criterion 50% off sale, and if you don't got any money for that, just check it out on Prime Video. It's definitely worth it. It's one of those movies that I was blown away by it, honestly. I can't believe it took me this long to see it. I enjoyed every minute of it. I can't wait to throw this into the permanent rotation. It's just that damn good. But that's going to do it here for me on another episode of Let's Talk. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, turn notifications on, share this with all of your friends, or you can even become a channel member like our 4 producers, John Doe Juggalo, Jason Martin, Mr. Smelly Potato, and Nocturnal, or you can even become a director like Frank's Media and Reviews. Check out his YouTube channel as well, and you can always reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, the artist formerly known as Twitter, my email address, letstalkentmt@gmail.com. If you have any questions about this 4K Blu-ray that I didn't answer here, reach out to me there and ask me them there, and then after you're done doing all of that, just get out in those streets and tell your friends about us. We'll be seeing you around.